She didn't yell at me. She didn't cry. She didn't slam doors or send paragraphs at 2 a.m. She just touched my hair. And somehow that was worse than all of it. Okay, so I need you to stay with me here because this story, I've been sitting with it for 2 days now and I still can't fully explain what happened or why it hit me the way it did. It sounds simple on the surface. A missed call. An argument. A girl who remembered something I said 4 months ago like she'd written it down in a notebook somewhere. But it's not really about any of that. It's about the moment you realize someone has been paying attention to you in ways you didn't even know were possible. And it's about what that does to you when you're not ready for it. Let me start from the beginning because context matters here. A lot. I've been with Maya for almost a year now. And before you picture some perfectly curated couple with matching outfits and cute anniversary posts. Stop. That's not us. We're more like two people who found each other at the exact wrong moment in life and somehow made it work anyway. We met in the fall of junior year. I was stressed out of my mind, 3 major assignments due in the same week, running on 4 hours of sleep, eating vending machine food like it was a dietary choice and not a slow form of giving up. I was sitting in the campus library at one of those long tables by the window, and I had my headphones in but nothing playing, which is something I do when I don't want anyone to talk to me but also kind of want someone to talk to me. She sat down 2 seats away without asking, which honestly annoyed me a little at first. There were open tables everywhere. But then she put her stuff down, pulled out her laptop, and just started working. No small talk. No, is this seat taken? Just existing in my space like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't know why, but that felt comfortable. We ended up sitting there for like 2 hours without saying a word to each other. And then I closed my laptop too hard out of frustration because the paper I was writing was genuinely going nowhere. And she looked up and said, "Bad paragraph or bad thesis?" I blinked. Thesis, probably. She nodded like she understood completely. Those are the worst because you can't fix the paragraph until you fix the thesis, but you can't think about the thesis until you get some air, but you can't get air because you feel guilty leaving. I stared at her for a second. Yeah, exactly that. And that was kind of it. We talked for the next hour, walked to the campus coffee shop, sat across from each other in a booth with bad lighting and good conversation, and I remember thinking, this person is different. Not in a movie way, in a real way, in a way that felt like she was already paying attention to something in me that I hadn't pointed out yet. We started dating about 6 weeks later, and for most of this year, things have been genuinely good. Not perfect, we have our moments, we have our differences, we argue about dumb stuff sometimes and important stuff sometimes. But there's this baseline between us that always feels safe. Like no matter what, at the end of the conversation, we're going to be okay. That's rare. I know that now more than I did then. But let me tell you about October, because October is where this whole story really starts. It was mid-October. Late, like 1 a.m. late, the kind of late that makes you say things you'd normally keep to yourself because your filter's off and you're tired and the darkness feels like it gives you permission to be honest. We were on the phone, not even talking about anything serious. I think we'd started on some random topic about whether horror movies are actually scary or just startling, which is the kind of debate we have at midnight apparently. And somewhere in the middle of it, I'd had a really rough week. Like genuinely hard. Deadlines. A bad grade on something I'd worked hard on. A falling out with a friend that hadn't fully resolved yet. I wasn't talking about any of it. I was just tired in that deep, bone-level way where you're not upset about one specific thing, you're just carrying a lot. And at some point I said, casually offhanded, not even really directed at her, I think the thing that calms me down the most when I'm stressed is honestly just when someone plays with my hair. Like that's it. My brain just goes quiet. I didn't say it like it was a confession. I said it the way you'd say, I like cold weather, or I always sleep with a fan on. Just a fact about myself that floated out into the conversation. She said, noted, one word, and then we kept talking about horror movies. I laughed a little when she said it. Noted, like she was filing it away somewhere. I thought it was cute. I thought it was a small moment. I forgot about it almost immediately. She didn't. Okay, so fast forward to last week. Tuesday. I had a long day at school. Lectures back to back. A group meeting that ran over by 40 minutes. And then I ended up staying on campus later than planned because I was trying to get ahead on some reading. By the time I finally packed up my bag and headed out, I was running on empty. I texted Maya before I left, "Heading out now. I'll call you when I get home." She replied with a thumbs up. Simple. Normal. Here's what happened next. I got home. I sat down on my bed for a second because I was going to take off my shoes, change out of my clothes, and then call her. That was the plan. That was a completely reasonable plan. Except, I closed my eyes for just a second, just to rest for a moment, and then I woke up 4 hours later. No shoes off, lights still on, jacket still on, phone on the bed next to me, screen lit up like a distress signal. I grabbed it and my stomach immediately dropped. She texted at 7:14, "You home?" 7:47. "Hello." 8:30. "Okay, so you're alive, or?" 9:02. "I'm not even mad, I'm just making sure you didn't get hit by a car." 9:45. "I'm a little mad." 10:12. "I called twice. No answer. I'm going to bed. Text me when you wake up from your little coma or whatever." I sat there in my jacket, in my dark room, reading all of these in sequence, and I felt that specific kind of guilt that has no good way out of it. Not because she was yelling, not because it was dramatic, but because she went from worried to patient to a little hurt to quiet, all in the span of a few hours, and I was just asleep. I texted back immediately, "I am so sorry. I fell asleep. I'm awake now. I'm fine. Are you okay?" She replied 3 minutes later, "I'm fine. Good night." 2 words, period at the end. Yeah. I wasn't sleeping again anytime soon. She was fine the next morning. Or at least, she seemed fine in the way that is somehow more uncomfortable than not fine. You know what I mean? Like everything is normal. She's responding, she's not cold exactly. But there's this slight shift in the air between you where you can tell something's still sitting there, unaddressed, waiting. We made plans to meet up between classes, just to talk, which, in relationship terms, means we both knew we needed to actually have the conversation. I got to our spot first, this bench outside the main building where we hang out sometimes between classes. It's kind of tucked back near a courtyard, and there are these big oak trees that block most of the noise from the main path, so it feels quieter than the rest of campus. I liked it there. We'd spent a lot of easy hours on that bench. She showed up about 5 minutes later. And here's the thing, she looked fine. Normal. She was wearing that gray hoodie I like. Hair down. Bag over one shoulder. She sat down next to me without any kind of dramatic entrance. No visible tension in her face. She put her bag between her feet and looked ahead for a second. Then she said, very calmly, So, I said. And then neither of us said anything for a moment, and I could already feel it. That specific kind of tension that isn't loud. It's not fighting. It's that low, steady pressure of two people who care about each other sitting in the discomfort of something unresolved. I'm really sorry, I said. I genuinely just fell asleep. I know that sounds. I know you fell asleep, she said. Her voice was even. Not cold. Not warm. Just level. And somehow that was more unsettling than if she'd been upset. Okay, I said. I'm not upset that you fell asleep, she continued. I'm upset that I had no way of knowing that. I went from thinking you were on your way home to thinking maybe something actually happened to you. I know. And I'm not saying you had to stay awake. I'm saying a text. One text. That's all I needed. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't even particularly heated. But every word was landing with this quiet weight. Like each sentence was perfectly measured. And I was sitting there trying to figure out how to respond in a way that didn't sound defensive, because genuinely, she was right. I knew she was right. You're completely right, I said. I should have texted you when I got home before doing anything else. That's on me. She looked at me then, and for a second I thought that was going to be enough, that we'd move past it and go back to normal. But she wasn't done. You know what your problem is? She said, and her tone shifted slightly. Still calm, but more direct now, like she was about to say something she'd been thinking about more carefully than just the missed call. I opened my mouth to respond, and that's when it happened. The wind picked up for a second, one of those unexpected little gusts that just rearranges everything. My hair, which, I'll be honest, was already doing whatever it wanted that morning. Went directly into my face and over my forehead in the most annoying way possible. I started to reach up to fix it, but she got there first. Without breaking her sentence, without pausing, without even fully looking at me. She just reached over and fixed my hair, pushed it back, smoothed it down on one side, and then her hand moved to the back of my head and she scratched lightly, just for a second, just 2 or 3 seconds, that spot right at the base where your skull meets your neck. Then her hand was back in her lap, and she kept talking. You're really good at making yourself seem like the reasonable one in an argument, but what you actually do is, I was not listening to a single word. I want to be very clear about what happened to me in those 2 or 3 seconds, because it's genuinely hard to describe. It was like someone had reached into my chest and just turned a dial down, like all the tension I'd been holding in my shoulders for the past 16 hours. The guilt, the defensiveness, the mental rehearsing of my side of the argument just evaporated. Gone. Instantly. I was sitting there on that bench, and I was completely calm, and I had absolutely no idea why. She was still talking. I was nodding, but I had no idea what she was saying. My brain was just blank, peaceful, like that state you hit right before you fall asleep where everything slows down. Then she stopped. I blinked. She was looking at me, not with confusion, with recognition, like she had just watched something happen that she'd been expecting. What? I said. She tilted her head slightly, and there was this small smile at the corner of her mouth that she was clearly trying to contain. You don't even know what I just said, do you? It wasn't really a question. I paused. Genuinely tried to recall the last sentence. Could not. I heard some of it. She looked at me for another second. That smile got slightly bigger, slightly more uncontrollable. And then she said it. See? This is why you never survive arguments with me. What does that even mean? I asked. And I want to be honest, I was not fully recovered yet. Like the calm was still there. That weird, involuntary, bone-deep calm that had shown up without my permission. I was trying to pull myself back into the conversation, trying to find the thread of what we'd been talking about. But some part of me was still just quiet. You get distracted too easily, she said. She wasn't being mean. There was no cruelty in it. She said it the way you'd say something obvious, like she was simply observing a fact about the world. And I thought about denying it. I thought about saying something like, I was listening. I was just thinking about what you said, which would have been both untrue and immediately see-through. I thought about redirecting, getting back to the actual topic, steering us back to where we were before the hair thing happened. But the problem was that she was completely, undeniably 100% right. I opened my mouth, closed it. She raised an eyebrow slightly, and I almost laughed. I'm telling you, I had to physically press my lips together because this was still technically an argument, and laughing in the middle of an argument is not a great look. But I could see the whole thing so clearly, the way she just deployed something I told her 4 months ago in a late-night half-awake phone conversation about horror movies, and used it with the precision of a surgeon. Not to be manipulative, not to win something, just effortlessly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She remembered, she filed it away, and when the moment came, she didn't even plan it. She just did it, instinctively, and watched the whole argument dissolve in real time. Can we focus on the actual issue? I said, trying to recalibrate, trying to get some footing back. She looked at me with this expression that I can only describe as affectionate exasperation. No, she said. No, because now you look too calm. She gestured at me. You look like you just woke up from a nap. I can't argue with someone who looks like that. That's not. I stopped, took a breath. You literally caused this. You can't use it against me. I didn't do anything, she said, and she was absolutely trying not to smile now. The wind messed up your hair. I fixed it. That's just being a decent person. You scratched the back of my head. I do that sometimes. Maya. What? I looked at her. She looked at me. The smile she'd been containing finally broke through. Just slightly, just at the corners, and it was so genuine and so warm and so her that I had to look away for a second or I was going to fully lose the ability to pretend this was still an argument. This is not fair, I said, Probably not, she agreed. And that was kind of the moment the argument ended. Not with a resolution, not with a proper conclusion, not with a formal, okay, we're good now. It just stopped, like a storm that runs out of energy. We both sat there, and the tension that had been there since last night slowly dissolved, and the bench that had felt uncomfortable 20 minutes ago felt normal again. The trees were moving a little in the breeze. Someone across the courtyard was laughing at something on their phone. The world was just continuing unbothered the way it does. We sat quietly for a while after that. Not awkward silence. That's the thing about Maya. She knows the difference between silence that needs filling and silence that needs to be. Most people can't do that. Most people panic in the quiet and start talking just to cover it, which almost always makes things worse. She just sat there. I sat there. The argument was gone. But I was thinking. I was thinking about October, about that phone call, about the horror movie debate, about me saying that one offhanded thing about my hair and her saying noted and me barely registering it. I was thinking about how many other things I'd said like that, casually, without weight, without even meaning to share something real, and wondering how many of them she'd quietly caught and kept. It was a strange feeling. Not uncomfortable exactly, but significant, like standing at the edge of something and suddenly realizing how deep it is. There's a version of this that could feel unsettling, right? The idea that someone is cataloging the small, unguarded things you say. In the wrong relationship with the wrong person, that could be something to be careful of. But this didn't feel like that. This felt like being known. And I don't think I fully understood until that moment how much of a difference there is between being loved and being known. You can love someone without fully seeing them. You can care about someone deeply and still miss the texture of who they actually are. The small things, the offhanded admissions, the quiet preferences they mention once and never repeat because they didn't think anyone was keeping track. She keeps track. Not to use it. Not as some strategy. Just because she listens. Actually listens. In that way that I think most of us are starving for and don't even realize it until someone does it and suddenly you feel it everywhere. I was still sitting in the middle of that realization when she shifted next to me and leaned her head on my shoulder. No announcement. No, can I? Just a slow, quiet lean until her head was resting there and she let out a small exhale like she was putting something down. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. After a moment she said, very quietly, "Just text me next time so I know you're alive, idiot." The word idiot was soft. The kind of soft that means the opposite of what it says. And I don't know. Something about that sentence just unlocked something in me. Because it was so simple. So specific. It wasn't "I need you to communicate better," or "you need to be more considerate of my feelings," or any of the composed, correct ways you're supposed to say things in a healthy relationship. It was just, text me so I know you're alive. Like the realest version of everything she'd been trying to say. She wasn't angry about a missed call. She was scared. For a minute, for an hour, for those hours between the first text and the last one. She was genuinely worried about me. And the anger was just where that worry went when it didn't have anywhere else to be. I put my arm around her. She didn't move. Just stayed there, head on my shoulder, looking at the courtyard. "I'm sorry," I said. For real this time. Not as a conflict resolution tactic, not to move past something. Just because I meant it. "I know," she said. And that was it. That was the whole thing. I've been turning this over in my head for 2 days now. And every time I think I've got it figured out, something new surfaces. Because on the surface, this is a funny story. I know that. Guy falls asleep. Girlfriend gets worried. She calls him out the next day. And instead of a real fight, she plays with his hair and short-circuits his whole nervous system in about 3 seconds. It's funny. I'll admit it's funny. But there's something underneath it that I keep coming back to. And I want to try to put it into words because I think it matters. We spend a lot of time, especially when we're younger, especially when we're new to relationships, thinking that love is about the big moments, the grand gestures, the things that cost something, the times when someone shows up in a dramatic, obvious way and makes it impossible to miss. And those things are real. I'm not saying they're not. But I think the people who love you best are the ones who show up in the small moments too. The 1 a.m. phone calls that are just about horror movies and nothing. The noted after you say something true about yourself without really meaning to. The hand that reaches over in the middle of an argument, Not to end it, not as a tactic, but just because that's who they are and they see you and they remember. Maya remembered something I said in October like it was worth keeping. And she didn't even use it on purpose. That's what I keep coming back to. She wasn't trying to disarm me. She wasn't running some kind of calculated play. She just saw my hair get messed up by the wind and her hand moved on its own. Because she knew, somewhere in the back of her mind, that it would help. And it did. That's not strategy. That's care. That's the kind of care that becomes instinct because it's been practiced and paid attention to. I think about the way I usually am in arguments. The way I build my case, prepare my points, tell myself the story of why I'm right in advance. The way I armor up a little bit. Not out of malice, just out of self-preservation, because even in arguments with people you love, there's always the small fear of being misunderstood. And she just reached right through all of it. Without trying. Without even meaning to. I don't know how to fully articulate what that did to me, except to say that it made me feel safe in a way I wasn't expecting to feel in the middle of a conflict. And feeling safe in the middle of a conflict with someone is actually one of the rarest things in the world. I've been saying this to a couple of people since it happened, and I want to say it here too because I think it's true. The scariest people to love are the ones who actually pay attention. Not scary in a bad way. Scary in the way that all truly significant things are a little scary because they matter, and because matching means you can be affected, and being affected means you're open, and being open means you're not entirely in control anymore. When someone remembers the small things, the offhanded things, the things you said once at midnight without thinking, they have something. Not something dangerous, but something real. They have a map of you that you didn't consciously hand over, built out of all the little moments you thought were just moments. And one day they'll use it, not against you, for you, in ways you didn't see coming, in moments you didn't plan for, and it will land harder than anything deliberate could have. That's what she did on that bench. And the reason I'm still thinking about it 2 days later isn't because it was dramatic or painful or cinematic. It's because it was quiet. It was ordinary. It was a hand in my hair in the middle of an argument, and the simplest sentence in the world at the end of it. Text me so I know you're alive, and somehow that was the most I felt understood in a very long time. I've been trying to figure out what I actually learned from this, because I'm someone who likes to understand the thing underneath the thing. I don't just want to say, she's great, I got lucky, and move on. I want to understand it. Here's what I think. The argument wasn't really about the missed call. She told me that with one sentence at the end of the whole thing. It was about the worry. About what it feels like to care about someone and have them go quiet and not know why. And about the gap between, I know they're fine, and I need to know they're fine. And I think a lot of conflicts in relationships are like that. The surface thing, the missed call, the forgotten plan, the careless comment. It's rarely the real thing. The real thing is usually smaller and more tender. It's usually about what the surface thing represents, about what it said without meaning to, about what someone needed and didn't get. If she had yelled at me, I think I would have gotten defensive. I probably would have made it about the fact that I fell asleep accidentally, which is true, which is understandable, but which would have completely missed the point. And we might have argued ourselves around in circles trying to establish who was more right, which is the kind of conversation that takes a long time and leaves both people feeling worse. Instead, she came in calm and clear. She said the real thing underneath the surface thing. She also, without planning it, reminded me in the gentlest possible way that I was in a safe place, with someone who knew me, who remembered the small things, who reached over without thinking because that's just who she is. And we skipped the whole unnecessary part. We went straight to the part where I understood. I want to be someone who does that too. I think about whether I listen to her the way she listens to me, whether I remember the small things, whether I catch the offhanded admissions and file them somewhere useful. I'm honestly not sure I do it as well as she does, and I think that's something worth working on. Not because I'm keeping score, but because she deserves to feel as known as she makes me feel. That's what love looks like up close, I think. Not the highlight reel, not the grand gestures, the bench, the quiet, the hand in the hair, the sentence that says I was scared because I care about you, delivered like it's the simplest thing in the world. I texted her last night before I went to sleep, not because anything was wrong, just because I wanted to. Home, alive, not napping, proof of life attached. I sent a photo of myself in my room, fully awake, shoes off, looking like a reasonable adult human who had definitely not just passed out for 4 hours. She replied about a minute later, "Took you long enough." And then, a second later, "Good night." No period this time. I smiled at my phone like an idiot and went to sleep. Here's what I'll leave you with, because I've been thinking about it and I genuinely want to know. Have you ever had someone remember something small you said, something you almost forgot you even mentioned, and use it to take care of you in a moment you didn't expect? Because I think that's one of the rarest forms of love there is, and I'm curious, do you think most people recognize it when it happens, or do we only understand it after the fact? Let me know in the comments. I'm actually asking, and if this story hit you somewhere you weren't expecting, if you saw yourself in it, or someone you know, or someone you miss, I see you. These are the stories worth telling. The ordinary ones. The ones that happen on benches, in the middle of almost arguments, in the quiet after the storm. Take care of each other, and text people back. Please.